In a quiet Cincinnati neighborhood, an unimaginable horror unfolded, a crime so gruesome that even hardened detectives struggled to comprehend it. This is the story of Deasia Watkins and the devastating tragedy that stunned the world. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear is one of the most shocking cases ever recorded. Deasia Watkins' life began surrounded by chaos. Born into a volatile and dysfunctional home, she was raised in an environment where love and stability were virtually non-existent. Her mother, Tina Johnson, battled severe mental illness, depression, and substance abuse. Diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and mild intellectual disabilities, Johnson struggled with even basic parenting responsibilities. Deasia's father, Terrence Watkins, was absent, frequently incarcerated, and battling his own drug problems. The home Deasia grew up in was filthy, unstable, and dangerous. In 1998, authorities intervened after a teenager was sexually assaulted inside the family's apartment while babysitting Deasia and her brother. The court quickly determined that the children were in immediate danger. Placed into foster care, Deasia bounced between emergency shelters, group homes, and relatives' houses. At one point, she lived with her aunt, who initially provided a safe and nurturing environment, but eventually could no longer care for her. Each time, Deasia found a shred of stability, it was ripped away, leaving deep emotional scars. Eventually, a longtime family friend, Barbara Owens, took Deasia in. Owens provided a loving home with other children for Deasia to bond with. For a few years, Deasia seemed to thrive. She began speaking more, attending therapy, and developing relationships. But even then, the trauma of her early childhood clung to her. In 2005, her biological mother, Tina Johnson, resurfaced. She claimed she had turned her life around and wanted her children back. "I can take care of my children now. I miss them very much," she wrote to the court. Although Deasia remained with Owens, her mother's return reawakened deep feelings of abandonment and confusion. Fast forward to early 2015. Deasia Watkins, now 20 years old, had entered a new chapter of her life, motherhood. Her daughter, Janiyah Watkins, was born in December 2014, a tiny, innocent baby girl with her whole life ahead of her. To the outside world, it may have seemed like Deasia was trying to create a better future. But inside her mind, darkness was taking hold. Family members who had seen Deasia's mental health struggles since her teen years quickly noticed disturbing changes after Janiyah's birth. Deasia became increasingly paranoid, withdrawn, and erratic. She often spoke about demons, claiming they were trying to harm her and her child. At times, she would scream uncontrollably, and some family members said she seemed to exist in a world detached from reality. They also noticed her behavior was becoming violent, not just verbally aggressive, but physically unstable. There were reports that she would slam doors, lash out unexpectedly, and talk to people who weren't there. Her mental deterioration escalated so rapidly that family members grew terrified for Janiyah's safety. Alarmed, Hamilton County Jobs and Family Services, JFS, got involved. After conducting an investigation, authorities deemed Deasia mentally unfit to care for her baby. Social workers placed Janiyah into the temporary custody of Deasia's aunt, a woman who had once helped raise Deasia herself. The hope was that under her aunt's supervision, both mother and daughter would be safe. Deasia was allowed only supervised visitations with strict instructions to continue her psychiatric treatment and medication regimen. But soon after the custody change, the situation worsened. According to reports, Deasia stopped taking her prescribed medications, including powerful antipsychotics intended to control her delusions and paranoia. Without medication, her descent into psychosis accelerated. At the aunt's home, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Relatives noticed her wandering the house at odd hours, muttering under her breath. She displayed fits of rage, sudden outbursts of anger and confusion, terrifying those around her. Some family members began locking their bedroom doors at night, terrified of what Deasia might do. Despite these warning signs, no emergency action was taken to re-hospitalize her. Then, on March 16, 2015, tragedy struck. That morning, inside her aunt's Westwood home in Cincinnati, Deasia Watkins committed an act so brutal it stunned even veteran police officers. In a frenzied psychotic episode, Deasia attacked her own daughter. Janiyah, just 3 months old, suffered catastrophic injuries. Her body bore signs of blunt force trauma, multiple stab wounds, and in the most horrifying detail, decapitation. At around 8 a.m., a family member living in the home made a frantic 911 call after discovering the unimaginable. The voice on the call was panicked, nearly hysterical, reporting that Deasia had killed the baby. When police arrived, the scene was one of pure nightmare. Janiyah's tiny body was found on a kitchen counter, covered in a bloody blanket. Blood spattered the floors, the walls, the entire kitchen bore witness to unimaginable violence. The child's arm was partially severed. There were deep stab wounds in her chest and torso. Her head was detached, placed separately on the countertop nearby. Adding an even more chilling layer, investigators found that a knife had been placed in Janiyah's tiny hand, possibly by Deasia after the attack, though her reasons for doing so remain unclear. Some theorized she may have believed she was arming the baby against perceived threats in her delusional state. The walls and floors of the kitchen were splattered with blood. The entire home bore signs of the frenzied violence that had erupted inside. Officers found Deasia inside the house, blood-soaked and speaking incoherently. She made nonsensical statements about protecting her child from evil, still locked in her delusional state. Authorities described the crime scene as one of the most gruesome and horrifying they had ever encountered. Hardened detectives, some with decades of experience, had to leave the room to compose themselves. Deasia Watkins was immediately arrested and charged with aggravated murder. The community and the nation were left stunned, struggling to comprehend how a young mother could commit such a horrifying act against her own child. As the investigation unfolded, the full extent of the failures leading up to Janiyah's death became clear. Reports revealed that Deasia's mental health had been deteriorating for weeks. Relatives had warned authorities about her alarming behavior. There were desperate calls for help that, tragically, were not acted on in time. Deasia Watkins was found not guilty. Initially, she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity in the 2015 death of her 3-month-old daughter, Janiyah Watkins. However, after undergoing psychiatric treatment and being found competent to stand trial, she changed her plea. In February 2017, Watkins pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. The case garnered national attention due to its tragic and disturbing nature, but since her sentencing, there have been no significant public updates regarding her status or appeals. Deasia Watkins' aunt was not charged in connection with the tragic death of baby Janiyah Watkins. Although the aunt had been granted temporary custody of Janiyah and was instructed by authorities to keep Deasia away from the child unless supervised, she allowed Deasia to stay in her home about a week before the incident. Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters acknowledged that while this decision was a serious lapse in judgment, prosecuting the aunt would be very difficult because the court order specifically applied to Deasia, not the aunt. Furthermore, the aunt was considered a potential witness in the case, and there was no evidence suggesting she was awake or aware of the events leading up to the crime. As the investigation unfolded, the full extent of the failures leading up to Janiyah's death became clear. Reports revealed that Deasia's mental health had been deteriorating for weeks. Relatives had warned authorities about her alarming behavior. There were desperate calls for help that, tragically, were not acted on in time. The tragedy did not end with Deasia's arrest. It lingered in the silence, in the questions, and most of all, in the small white casket that now carried baby Janiyah to her final rest. The funeral was quiet, almost hidden from the world. There were no cameras, no crowds, just a few shattered family members holding on to each other for strength they no longer had. The church was filled with a devastating stillness. At the front, surrounded by white lilies, sat a casket far too small for this kind of sorrow. Inside, it lay Janiyah, a baby girl who would never get to say her first words, take her first steps, or feel the simple joy of being a child. Family members wept openly, some unable to stand, others clutching tissues soaked in tears. Prayers were whispered, but they felt hollow against the weight of what had been lost. There were no long speeches, because what words could ever make sense of a tragedy like this? As the casket was slowly lowered into the ground, the cries that filled the air were raw, full of disbelief, guilt, and heartbreak. It wasn't just a funeral for Janiyah. It was a funeral for a future that never had a chance. Her short life and her brutal death would forever haunt those who loved her. And somewhere, deep inside everyone who attended that day, an uncomfortable truth echoed. The system had failed her. Her family had failed her. And now it was too late to save her. The tragic loss of little Janiyah Watkins is not just the story of one mother's desperate struggle, but also a reflection of the silent battles that so many women face. Behind the headlines, there was a mother, a daughter, and a family left in the wake of devastating mental health struggles, isolation, and untreated trauma. Deasia Watkins, a young woman grappling with her own mental health, was unable to break free from the overwhelming grip of her demons. Sadly, in her darkest moments, she took the life of her precious baby girl, Janiyah, a child who never had the chance to grow, to learn, or to experience the world. This heartbreaking case shines a light on the often overlooked issue of maternal mental health. It's important to recognize that 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression, and of those, about 1 in 1,000 may suffer from the more severe form known as postpartum psychosis, a condition that can cause hallucinations, delusions, and a complete break from reality. Despite these staggering statistics, many women continue to suffer in silence, too ashamed or too overwhelmed to seek the help they need. We must raise awareness about these issues, recognizing that mental health is as important as physical health. Women who are struggling with postpartum mental health conditions need support, access to care, and understanding from those around them. This tragedy could have been avoided if more attention had been paid to Deasia's declining mental state and her need for intervention. May Janiyah's life, though stolen far too soon, not be forgotten. Let her memory serve as a call to action, to seek help when needed, to listen with compassion, and to provide support for women who are silently suffering. May Janiyah rest in peace, and may her story encourage us all to prioritize mental health care, especially for mothers, and help raise awareness about the deadly consequences of untreated postpartum conditions. Let this tragedy inspire positive change so that no other child has to suffer the loss of a mother who is lost in her own pain. Thank you for taking the time to watch and reflect on this heartbreaking story. If you found this story important, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Turning on notifications will ensure you never miss another story that needs to be heard. Please remember, liking this video does not mean you support the crime. It means you support bringing awareness to real, urgent issues that affect so many lives. I also encourage you to follow me on Facebook. By supporting this channel, you are helping give a voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Rest in peace, Janiyah Watkins. Your story will not be forgotten. Together, let's shed light on the silent battles so many face and help make a difference, one story at a time. Stay safe, and I'll see you in my next video.